That say that Putin's move was genius. He called it savvy. No concern for the Ukrainian people. A reminder of how cozy his relationship was with Vladimir Putin. With your Media Minute, Howie Kurtz, Fox News.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Crunch time in Ukraine. I'm Chris DeMayo, Fox News. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky saying the next 24 hours are seen as crucial in his country's fight against Russia.
Over the past 24 hours, we've seen the capital here, Kyiv, take some artillery shells on the outskirts of the city, and heavy fighting, too, inside the second city, the second largest city in Ukraine, Kharkiv. Intense battles on the street between Russian forces and Ukrainians, sometimes soldiers, sometimes civilians, often using shoulder-mounted weapons as they fight back and forth in intense and deadly street battles. By the end of the day, Ukrainians still held control of that city, so no major population centers have gone over to the Russian side in the first 5 days of this invasion.
Fox's Steve Harrigan. Meantime, Ukrainians are leaving their country by the thousands.
Tens of thousands of Ukrainians are said to have fled to neighboring countries, including Poland and Hungary.
Putin is a crazy person who doesn't understand what he's doing.
She's from Kyiv and just arrived in Romania.
I have a lot of my relatives in Kyiv who are sitting in the bomb shelters right now because there is a bombing everywhere and people are afraid and scared.
Ukraine has ordered all men aged between 18 and 60 to stay put, seeking to keep potential fighters inside the country. In London, Simon Owen, Fox News.
A Wyoming Republican is again at odds with many in her own party. Congresswoman Liz Cheney says a hands-on approach by the U.S. regarding Ukraine is necessary.
Look, we've been down that road before. We've seen isolationism in both parties, and it's always been wrong and it's always been dangerous. America cannot defend and maintain our own freedom and security if we think that we're going to simply withdraw from the world and not lead.
Cheney speaking on CBS's Face the Nation. Ukraine's sending a delegation to meet with Russian officials for talks along the border of Ukraine and Belarus. America's listening to Fox News.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
News.
A defending NASCAR Series champ takes the checkered flag at the Wise Power 400 at California's Auto Club Speedway.
Watch Jones, big run on the outside. Dillon on the bottom, slides up right to the tail of the 5. Here they come for the checkered flag. Kyle Larson keeps that surfboard trophy in California.
The call on Fox. Can a deal get done today to save the baseball season?
Today marks the unofficial deadline for Major League Baseball and the MLB Players Association to strike a deal on a new collective bargaining agreement and end the 3-month-long lockout. Yes, negotiations can continue, but the league last week doubled down on today as the deadline to have an agreement in principle or games for this upcoming season will be canceled, and opening day on March 31st will be delayed. Optimism ramped up heading into the weekend for a deal to be worked out. The league actually electing to delay more spring games through March 7th to afford the timeline for players and owners to work out a CBA and allow teams to get an order to report to Florida or Arizona. Matt Napolitano, Fox News.
2 major cities are ending their COVID-related moratorium evictions tomorrow, but it's not clear if an end means mass evictions.
The San Antonio Housing Authority says more than 4,000 homes are behind on the rent. But the chief operating officer of the authority said they're not going to start enforcing evictions, especially as evidence shows those who are furthest behind on the rent are the lowest income folks. They're asking people to set up payment plans with the Housing Authority and seek financial aid through the city. And in Seattle, after a city council vote to extend the moratorium failed, evictions can resume there as well, though officials note there are still millions of dollars allocated for rental assistance and some other current protections in place that were passed during the pandemic. Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
New York State school masking requirement will be scrapped by Wednesday. Governor Kathy Hochul's citing a big drop in COVID infections. I'm Chris DeMayo. This is Fox News.
Get you that far, but Chili's is bucking the trend with $15 meal deals. At Chili's, $15 gives you not one, not two, but 3-course meal deals complete with a drink, a starter, and an entree. Mix and match 3-course meals 15 ways to Sunday with soup, salad, or chips and salsa to start, and ranchero chicken tacos, honey chipotle crispers with rice, bacon ranch quesadillas, or personal fajitas for the main course. Build your own $50 meal deal at Chili's. More life and great value happen here.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
We buy a homeowner's policy and never give it another thought until something happens. Life brings changes, and our coverage needs can change. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at GuamAutospot.com.
Welcome to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, the only show on talk radio where common sense is a lot more common. Phone lines are now open at 888-TALK. That's 888-8255. And now, The Point proudly brings you Tall Tales with Senator Bob Klitzkie.
A well-regulated militia being necessary to the security of a free state, the right of the people to keep and bear arms shall not be infringed. And if you happen to be in Ukraine, you not only have the right to keep and bear arms, you have the right to receive them from your government to defend yourself against Russian attackers. There's an inference to be drawn from what's going on in Ukraine. I'm sure everyone who is on the right side of the firearms issue understands it so well that I needn't explain it here on Tall Tales. Okay, so here we go on another Monday. Best day of the week we've got is 4:08:02, which means that I've got almost 16 complete hours of Tall Tales ahead of me. I couldn't be happier. I'm here with my sidekick, Jose.
Present, sir.
And we are going to just Tall Tales it throughout this whole week. Let's start out with Demi Ikutni. This is, once again, here's the Daily News. I'm always curious about where things are located. The Daily News entire operation was in what used to be called the PDN building once upon a time, or the Daily News building. It's something else now. I never bothered to learn these new names.
It's another acronym.
Yeah, something like some
DNA or something.
Like I need to know more about DNA.
Ivory Tower.
Yeah. So the entire daily news operation used to be in that building, but then some of it moved out to Compadres Mall in Didido. But when I read editorials like this, I suspect that they have moved some of their operation perhaps to Mars. They don't seem to be living on the planet Earth.
Nope.
At least their editorials don't reflect that. So here's today's editorial. Our view, dropping vaccination proof is another step to economic recovery. When the governor dropped the proof of vaccination requirement for businesses, the island took another step toward economic recovery. On Friday, Governor Lulian Guerrero announced that proof of vaccination would not be required in restaurants, bars, gyms, and theaters. Not meeting vaccination proof shows returning visitors that we are confident in our island's efforts to control the Wuhan virus. It also shows that they've been making the effort to keep each other safe. With the concurrence of our public health, quote, with the concurrence of our public health officials, our physicians advisory group, and our surgeon cell, we are beginning a strategic and gradual lift of restrictions, the governor said in a video message. The mandate was active for 6 months, with some restaurants deciding to close or suspend dine-in service in response, and with some just plain going broke and having to shut their doors. Though the mandate wasn't supported by everyone, whoa, talk about an understatement, it was necessary. When it was put in effect, the Delta variant was spreading and the government was trying to get more people vaccinated. Residents acted by getting vaccinated and later boosted as another variant became a threat. Currently, 95% of the eligible population have been vaccinated and more than 50% are boosted. Despite the ongoing threat of the Omicron and Delta variants, the governor said the latest data of cases and hospitalization is very promising to allow the recent restriction lift, and it will help my campaign since Felix Camacho has pretty well come out and trashed me on this whole mandate thing. Yeah, but that's not in the editorial. I just added that in because it belongs there. Now all businesses can allow more customers into their establishments, helping the economy. This also signals Guam's preparation for a return of the tourism industry. If we can keep ourselves safe, we can keep visitors safe as well. But we can't be resting on our laurels, or as we say in this part of the world, laurels, if you happen to be related to a laurel. We have to still take the necessary precautions by wearing our masks and sanitizing as much as possible. Despite recent news of the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention also loosening guidelines declaring masks not being required indoors, we still need to protect one another.
Okay, Bob. We're going to cite science in one paragraph and then dispute it in the next paragraph.
Absolutely.
They have no idea what they're talking about.
Really. But they know this. They're backing up the governor.
Right?
Yeah, they must have this contract with the Attorney General to handle his public relations. There are many options accessible to us to continue the momentum of staying safe. We need to use these resources, recognizing they keep us safe and healthy, and they will allow Guam to recover from our economic mishaps. Yeah, so, the governor, also known as the Red Queen, because when people would disagree with her, usually had just the same response as the Red Queen that Alice in Wonderland had. Governor, did you ever think that maybe all of these mandates are killing our economy? Off with his head! Yeah. So, I said, I don't know what the governor drinks. I suspect she drinks like coffee like most of us, but I think she once in a while looks at the tea leaves. And I think she's reading the tea leaves and thinking, I really screwed this up for a long, long time. And now I've got to figure some way to weasel out of it without admitting that I made a mistake, or without giving my critics like Felix Camacho more ammunition. So I was just, cruising around the internet today, and I ran across this, and Stripes, Stars and Stripes, certainly a political newspaper if there ever were one. CDC's new approach to COVID means most Americans can go without masks.
You don't say.
And, if you spend 20 minutes on the internet, you'll find article after article saying the same thing. Even the CDC says, we don't need no stinking masks. So what did the governor do? She said, you can go into restaurants now. So I understand that a reporter interviewed the governor, and the reporter said to the governor, Governor, how long do you think we'll be wearing these masks?
Forever!
Wait, she said that?
Could you say that again, Governor?
Forever!
Yeah, wow. It's amazing how Jose was able to catch the governor, in that soundbite. But
I just happened to be there.
Yeah, it's just so appropriate. Thank you very much, Jose. One more example of the realism of tall tales. All right, so one more time now. When they asked the governor, how long do you think people are going to have to be wearing masks on this island?
Forever!
All right, words to live by. All right, let's go from there to the card. And, of course, we start out with systemic racism. You know that today is Red Shirt Monday, and I will give anyone out there in our Facebook International Radio viewing audience the tip of my hat if you can post on Facebook the color of my shirt, the one that I'm wearing right now. It'll be coming here in a minute, I'm sure.
I'll give him a hint. It's not fuchsia.
It's not my green shirt. Yeah, it's not like going to the sunset and waiting for the green flash. And since it's Red Shirt Monday, that also means that we'll have another chance to gaze at Hope Cristobal's screen test. The test that Hollywood came all the way out here to run to see what kind of movie they'd like to star Hope Cristobal in. Okay, so then after Paul Zerzan versus systemic racism, we go to dirt versus void meetings, Russia versus Biden versus, as you were, starring John Kerry. If there were ever anyone who had the ability to take a complicated situation and immediately grasp the essence of it and explain it to the world, it's John Kerry. Then we've got All Stars versus the church. It seems that there was no one who was very satisfied with the church's performance at the bankruptcy trial that ended on Saturday. I've got the 36th Guam legislature versus the kids. Guess who's going to win that one? And, of course, this is classic identity politics. 36th Guam legislature versus the kids. How can you tell the difference? Then I've got civil society versus separatism. And for once, I find myself almost agreeing with Laura Souder, at least not vehemently disagreeing with her. Yeah. Civil society versus separatism, and along the same lines, Plessy versus Brown. And then stuff that's been on the calendar since last week, ACLU versus us, New York Times versus journalism, Moylan versus political parties, and the Squad versus Biden. Yeah, I'll give you a tip off here. Biden's giving his State of the Union address, I think Tuesday, Washington time.
From his basement.
From his basement, yeah. It's going to be, his speech will have a lot of depth, Jose. Yeah, there you go, yeah. Yeah, he's going to really dig deep for this one. Yeah. And, the custom is that a Democrat president gives a State of the Union address, and the media gives someone from the opposite party about the same amount of time to give the opposition speech, to come on the air, come on TV and say, everything you heard the president say is BS. Here's the real truth, right? This time it's going to be a little different. Instead of a Republican, well, it'll be a Republican too, but there will be somebody from the squad, from the Democrat Party, giving a counter address.
Is this for real?
This is true. This is not a beep beep, Jose.
No kidding.
Yeah. So, if you read a little bit, you find out that we talk about, are we heading for a civil war? And the answer to that question is, yeah, man, the Democrats are fighting like cats and dogs. There are the real Democrats, very few of them left, so few blue dog Democrats that they don't even need to wear a collar in the Capitol building anymore. So few moderate Democrats. And then over on the other end, the far left, the social Democrats, the squad, the folks like AOC and Ayanna Pressley and Rashida Tlaib. And let's see, one more. Ilhan Omar. Yeah. So they're very critical of Biden, like just about everybody else, but for different reasons. They're critical of him because he hasn't come far enough to the left. So anyhow, that's the card for today. I'll start. I already covered the Cerzan versus systemic racism. Before I get to dirt versus meetings, I thought I had a caller online, but must have been another Joe who changed his mind, right?
Yeah, I think so.
All right. So let's go on with dirt versus meetings. This is Southern Soil and Water Conservation District. They are at 303 UOG CNAS University Drive in Manila. The Southern Soil and Water Conservation District announces their regular board meeting with partners Wednesday, March 2 at 4 p.m. via Zoom. Now, you know that Public Law 36-34 says that every one of these notices has to have an agenda of the meeting, the full agenda, and the agenda has to be set out in such a manner that it puts the public on notice as to what is to be discussed. So let's just see if anybody out there can crack the code here for the Southern Soil District, the dirt folks. Item 1, meeting, call to order, and roll call. Item 2, approval of minutes, 1/5/2022. Item 3, committee reports. I didn't know they had committees. I'm wondering what the committees are. I'm wondering what they're going to report on. Item 4, partner reports. As Russ would say, dittos there. Item 5, open forum, Southern District farmers, ranchers, and landowners. What's an open forum? So, you guys, you're not making it. You didn't pass the test. I wonder if anybody out there is able to decipher what they did. Now, I'm going to get to this a little bit later on, but I can do this every day. It takes me literally 2 minutes to go through the paper and find these and come in and report them, send them off to the vigilance group. Is the Attorney General visually challenged? Does anyone in his office know how to read? Wouldn't you think they'd be doing the same thing? And when they see something like this, would it be that hard for somebody in the Attorney General's office to call up, hey, is this David Dirt over there at Soil Confirmation? Yeah, this is Andrew A.G. I'm calling you about the notice you read in your paper. You violated Public Law 36-34. I'm sending you a copy of the bill, of the note, and the PowerPoints that Rob Weinberg put together and showed everybody who had enough energy to come to his educational plan. You can't do this, David Dirt. It's going to blow up in your face, so stop doing it. Would that be so hard?
Maybe the AOG is too busy.
Yeah. Well, I'm talking about his new lawsuit when we get farther down the card. All right, next we've got Andrei Illarionov telling Newsmax that Putin is threatening the United States with nuclear blackmail. And, of course, we know that. Now, people have often analogized geopolitics, the geopolitical world, with a chess game. And in a sense it is, because if you've ever played chess, I've played a lot of chess. I'm happy to say I've even won a couple of games, but not very many. It's a hard game, and it's a game that people, if they know how to do it, can get very good at it. So if you're really not a chess aficionado, the way it works is that there are different kinds of pieces that have different abilities to move in different directions on the board. And the idea is to move your pieces in such a manner that you have put the king in a captured position that he cannot get out of, killing the king. That's what it's all about. So some pieces move diagonally. Some people move red, black, red, black, red, black. Some are able to go two forward and one to the right. And it's very well constructed, and there's a lot of thought. People have written books just on chess openings, your first two or three moves.
You always have to be moves ahead of your opponent and always know what their move is, and you can counter.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
It is. So there's a lot of strategy involved there. You know, the word gambit is used frequently in chess. A little clarification here. Gambit and gamut are not the same word. I've heard people saying, yeah, you know, when he started criticizing, he ran the whole gambit, when what they really meant was ran the whole gamut. So a gambit consists of giving something away to gain something. So in chess, a gambit means that you sacrifice one of your pieces. We sometimes refer to them as men. Chess has been around a long time. It would be too hard to talk in terms of chess notation and refer to the pieces as they. I suppose there are elements in our community that are doing it already.
I bet you some people play with two queens.
Yeah, on the chess and on the chessboard even. Yeah, so you know you move pawn to king 4. That's a classic opening. Now the other side is going to move its pawns, and it will move in response to the way you move. So it's all response, move, response, plan, look ahead, set up checks, discovered checks. It's a very entertaining game. But you play it on a board with inanimate pieces. Now, international geopolitics, I guess that's redundant, geopolitics, same thing. So when Russia mobilized its troops and put 100,000 of them on the Ukraine border, that was like moving a chess piece on the board. And he wanted to see what the United States would do. Now, sometimes what you do is what you say. So what did we say? Our president said, well, you know, there may be a minor incursion into Ukraine, which kind of like is telling Putin, go ahead, give it a shot. We aren't all that upset about it, right? So along about the same time, Belarusia, another former Soviet social republic, Putin has been able to pull them into his orbit. And there were Russian troops training in Belarusia on the border with Ukraine. Well, that's another pretty strong signal. And so on down the line. So the latest chess move is this, that Putin has alerted his nuclear strike team. He said, okay, fellas, it's Reveille. Time to roll out of the sack, put your uniforms on, test out your equipment, be ready to go. And of course, the message to all and sundry is it's possible that Putin might use nuclear arms inside Ukraine, testing to see what the United States is going to do. And what does Putin do? He goes to Delaware.
You mean Biden?
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Biden goes to Delaware.
Right.
Yeah, he goes to Delaware. Now, causing everybody to wonder, are there special bomb shelters in Delaware? Well,
depends.
Will he feel safe? Depends, in both sense of the word. That's the word.
Went to go chain them.
Yeah, right. So, our reaction all the way along the lines has been to communicate to Putin, we're really, we're not going to send troops in. We're really not going to take this very seriously. We'll sanction the heck out of you. And you heard me the other day say that this is not going to work, not because it won't affect the Russians, but because it will affect us too much. There aren't very many Americans who are willing to pay $10 a gallon for gasoline that we're not buying from Russia anymore in order to bring Putin back under control. It's just not going to happen. And there are other commodities like gasoline that will have the same effect. So that's not going to work very well. So this whole thing with Biden versus Putin reminds me of, I can't remember who it was, probably somebody like Milton Berle, an old-time comedian, maybe even Red Skelton, who had this routine about the fight he was in and how he just really beat the tar out of the other guy. Well, tell us how you did it, Milton. Well, the first thing I did is I got him right in the tip of his index finger with my eye. Yeah. Yeah, and then right after that, I caught him right in the knee with my stomach. Yeah, and when the edge of his hand chopped into my back, I think that must have really hurt him. This is the Putin theory of defense. This is this is Biden playing chess with Putin.
Or tomorrow's editorial in PDN.
Exactly, yeah. So, once again, we use analogies, cards. Biden has the strongest hand of anybody who ever played poker in the history of the world. He's got the strongest hand. And what is he doing with it? Where are my deuces here? He's just so inept. Yeah, so that's the story there. And this guy, Ilarionov, yeah, let's take a short break and let me come back to Ilarionov.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts, brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point. Listen to The Point anytime, anywhere on Odyssey. Odyssey is your new audio home for all the music, news, sports, and podcasts that matter to you. Find your favorite stations like The Point and discover more. Music stations, local and trusted news sources, sports talk and team coverage, plus today's biggest podcasts. Find it all on the Odyssey app. AUDACY.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
We now return to Tall Tales with Bob Klitzkie, soaring over the confusion with his superpowers of truth. Call 888-TALK. That's 888-8255.
So this is a Newsmax article, and it quotes this former Putin economic advisor, Andrei Illarionov. And this is what he said. This particular decision, as NATO activates its response force for the first time in history, Russia's Putin has put his nuclear deterrent forces on ready, leaving the world on the verge of a nuclear showdown. This particular decision is not in response to a situation in Ukraine, not even what is going on in Ukraine right now, but as response to American readiness to apply sanctions. Illarionov, now a senior fellow at the Center for Security Policy in D.C., told Sunday's Wake Up America. The situation is unbelievably grave. The move is incomparable to any nuclear threat the world has faced to date, and the U.S. and NATO must respond in kind immediately, Illarionov told co-host Amanda Brillante. If the United States will not respond with adequate reaction to this decision, it means not only Ukraine, but the whole Europe, and at some point the United States will be under nuclear threat, direct nuclear threat. That's why the U.S. and NATO countries need to respond immediately, right now, to this nuclear blackmail of Putin. Think he'll do it? No. Brillante asked what the response should look like. That should be exactly the same. He said it should be putting all nuclear arsenal of the United States and NATO on the highest alert, at least equal response to what Putin has done. Remember when I was telling you about chess, moving, and etc.? Even that move, Illarionov lamented, will not stop Putin's aggression, but it will cause him to think at least a little bit of possible consequences. This absolutely changes the whole game. His goal is not Ukraine, meaning Putin. His goal is the 1997 line in Europe, which means half of Europe will be under his sphere of influence. But to get this, he needs to humiliate the United States and NATO, and he's doing exactly that right now. But you know, it's really kind of hard to humiliate Joe Biden.
Well, he doesn't really understand what's going on.
Well, and you know, when you start out, you start out at absolute zero, it's hard to lower the temperature. Short of an immediate and reciprocal response from the U.S. and NATO, Putin will proceed with his plan, and his next actions will be unable to predict. We don't know which piece he's going to move and where he's going to move it to. I'm sorry, but all these sanctions, even closing the airspace, is already too late. Illarionov stressed with an urgency in his remarks. Putin launched an absolutely new level of the geopolitical game. So we're back to 2 queens. Ordinarily, you only got 1 queen. Yeah. It is absolutely a different quality. There's just no choice now. If you don't use nuclear deterrent, Putin will use nuclear threat and nuclear blackmail against anyone, including the United States. He is already using against the United States this nuclear threat right now. Now, I suspect that there will be some people who listen to what I've just said, and they're going to say, man, Bob, aren't you scaring people? Aren't you deliberately stirring up fear. We don't want to go back to this nuclear stalemate thing that we had all during the Cold War. Is it really necessary to say things like that? And my response to that is, I'm not talking to everybody. Just those of you out there within the hearing of my voice who said, well, yeah, I voted for Joe Biden because I didn't like Trump. And here you go. Here you are. Okay, I mentioned a little earlier that if anyone had the ability to deal with complex situations and understand them and distill them and be in a position to really lay it out so everyone could understand, it's John Kerry. And I'm going to come to John Kerry's comment on this next, but let me entertain Senator Chris Duenas first. Good afternoon, Senator Chris Duenas.
Up day, Your Honor, Honorable Marine, Senator, and my favorite talk show host. I hope you caught, I want to talk about Ukraine, but I hope you caught the news that the bill you helped to draft passed unanimously, and Route 3 shall now be known as Brigadier General Ben Blas Memorial Highway.
I'm going to stand up for, can we have appropriate music for this, Jose? Buddies. Yeah.
Thank you for the help. Thank you for the help on that, sir. And you'll be proud to know that Brigadier General retired Roderick Leon Guerrero, Master Guns Joe San Agustin, and the testimony on the floor was overwhelmingly a great memorial to our hero. And it was definitely an honor, and thank you for your help on that.
Well, it was talk about a labor of love, Chris. I'm glad it passed. Now, of course, it still needs the governor's signature, doesn't it?
Well, I would hope, and I would anticipate. There was kind of an odd side note for one senator questioning the a funding source, which I think is a mandate of DPW to put up signs. But in that course of action, I got a hold of Vince Areola over at the DPW, and they're very much in favor of it and have no issues in terms of the money it will cost to produce the signs and erect them. They're completely in support of it. So I would be very surprised if the governor didn't sign it. But I wanted to kind of use that as a lead-in to the discussion you're having on Ukraine, Your Honor. And I see something that I know that is in your mind, so I want to bring it to the attention. I cannot help but be overwhelmed and amazed by the spirit the Ukrainians are showing, and their resolve and their absolute lesson to the world on what it means to be free. Knowing what you know in terms of the history of the region, the history of the country, I almost see this, I hate to say it, in the face of bloodshed and in the face of loss of life, although that's kind of the course normally for fighting for something such as freedom. But this is the antidote to the woke society.
It's certainly the direct opposite, isn't it?
It is, and it's so amazing. It's so amazing to see the fire in the streets and the craziness over the last couple of years, and particularly this last year, the freedom, the anti-sentiment of those who would try to take us back in time and try to reverse racism, if you will, in order for a narrative and something that is in our country has become pervasive of actually power, control, and exactly what the Ukrainians are fighting against with their blood and treasure.
Yeah.
Like I said, it's sad to think when I see the people escaping and the children and I didn't realize the beauty of that country, Your Honor. I mean, when they show the footage and everything else, and when they also talk about the celebration of freedom, and I think the reason why they're fighting so hard in different sectors that they show that are college towns that were, the bastion of freedom. I mean, young people going out to restaurants and bars, hanging out over the weekend, doing things that people normally do in a free society, enjoying themselves, but the education, the economy, and I know there's different angles to troubles in Ukraine, but and then the leadership of their president. I mean, how is that line just? I think that line will go down in history forever. Talk about making history. I don't need a ride. I need ammunition.
How about the 13 sailors out there in Snake Island? I think that line.
Oh, that's the best. That's the best.
Yeah,
that's the best.
Well, we kind of have our American equivalent. It goes like this: "Let's go, Biden."
Absolutely, but I just hope when I believe in victory. I'm praying for victory, and I'm praying that the international world the international community just comes together and realizes how much this guy who's basically, I think, being described as losing it at this point, Putin, defeats him and defeats that ideology, and we'll have the Ukrainians to thank for it.
I agree, Chris. Good observation, and congratulations on your bill passing. I hope that you've got 11 senators, good and true, ready to override the veto, because I'm going to go into a short historical lesson on the renaming of Marine Corps Drive to shed a little light on the governor's approach to such things after we finish and before I go into John Kerry. So let's have 11 folks ready to do the good fight, okay?
We're ready to do that, Your Honor, and also be on the lookout for 2 resolutions coming in the days and the weeks ahead that I think you're going to have a lot of fun talking about on your show.
I'll be on the lookout, Chris.
They have a semblance of Ray and Bob, and the other one has a semblance of a court action. So I think you're going to have some fun with it.
Okay, very good. Great. Thank you, Chris. Thanks for calling.
Just wanted to tease a little bit.
Okay.
Take care, my friend.
Good talking to you. Yeah, former and current Senator Chris Duenas. Yeah, I did put a bug in his ear to introduce a bill called Ben Blas Boulevard. Alliteration trumps everything, right? But it turns out that, once again, the national government, in order to get highway funds, you have to name it exactly correctly. And for some, there was some hang up with calling Route 3 a boulevard, so they went with some. But it doesn't matter.
We can still call it that.
Yeah, in fact, on Tall Tales, once it becomes law, it will be Ben Blas Boulevard. And I suspect the rest of the island will conform. But let's talk a minute about the governor signing that bill. Okay, we'll take a short break and we'll come back and talk about it after that.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tuman location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
Fade. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many, many jobs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds that kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
Yeah, so here we are. So Chris Duenas gave us the good news that the Ben Bloss Memorial Highway Bill has passed unanimously and is on its way to the governor, and he thinks the governor's going to sign it. But way back in the, let's see, it was the 27th Guam legislature. Ben Pangilinan was the speaker. Lou was chairman of the rules. So that legislature will be forever known as the Ben and Lou legislature, right? And John Gerber, good friend, supporter, Marine, good man, may he rest in peace, approached me and he said, you know, a lot of people think that the name of Highway 1, Route 1, is Marine Drive because of its proximity to the ocean. And Gerber said something like, you know, 1,548 Marines died, you know, making sure that we'd be able to name that highway whatever we wanted. And I think we should call it Marine Corps Drive so that younger folks coming up will know what it's all about. It's a part of our heritage, part of our history. And I said, I'll tell you what, John, I'll do a bill. I'll draft up a bill and do the best I can to get it passed. I did. I can't remember, probably 10 or 11 co-sponsors, not Ben and Lou, of course, right? And the bill had broad public support, and it could not get out of committee. I won't mention the name of the committee chairman. She's a nice person. I think perhaps just wasn't strong enough to fight the tide or didn't see a good reason to do it, but it couldn't get out of committee. And I was told Ben and Lou won't let it out of committee. They don't like it. And then the next thing coming back was Ben and Lou said they'll let it out of committee, but it's got to be Challen E. Marines. And I said, I don't think that's going to pass muster with the Marine Corps community, Senator. And I relayed that message to John Gerber, and I couldn't even begin. I can't even think about his response while I'm on the air. He was, yeah. We could fill up the rest of the show with what John Gerber said. So that didn't go. And so I did the best I could to try to get it through. And the next thing that happened was John Gerber said, I'm going to get that thing passed no matter what. And everybody remembers John Gerber making up that little cart and pulling it all the way from Anderson to Naval Station to support the renaming of Marine Corps Drive, right?
That was impactful.
And one of the people on the side of Route 1, Marine Drive at the time, cheering him on was none other than Governor Camacho. So John pulls in to get a drink of water, and Governor Camacho is right there patting him on the back. Nice going, John. 2 or 3 days later, Governor Camacho signs an executive order. Route 1 had been named Marine Drive by Governor Larson, a Marine Major General who was the military governor of the island at the time. So the law is an executive order can replace an executive order if there's no statute in place. So the governor cancels out Larson's executive order, enters his own executive order, and said, from now on, it's going to be Marine Corps Drive.
There you go.
So there's a little bit of history perhaps repeating itself here.
I don't think it's a coincidence.
Yeah, yeah. So I could just see, and the interesting thing about it was, you know, politicians do things sometimes that I don't like. And I do things that I think aren't even good for anybody, for the whatever. But if I analyze, I say sometimes, using my political prism, I see why they did it, because it's not a good thing, but the politics are there. Well, for Ben and Lou, the politics weren't there.
Not at all.
Not at all. The only thing they did was piss off every single Marine on the island and probably 90% of the rest of the veterans community, their mothers, fathers, sisters, brothers, on and on and on. And they didn't gain any support at all. They just took a hell of a shellacking. And the only reason that they did it, as far as I can tell, is that inside, they just don't like this idea of the military. They don't like the idea of Marines. And this was their chance. This was their chance to really take a shot. And they did.
Well, governor is in a conundrum here because not only is it a Marine, it's a native son of Guam.
Exactly. Exactly. One that did very well and one that was universally respected. And furthermore, a friend of mine, or maybe I should say I was a friend of his. Yeah, so it's going to be interesting to see how it plays out. And if she does sign it, how is she going to do her typical Lou Leon Guerrero? Well, you know, I signed it because I was busy that day and I didn't have time to do a veto message. But I signed it. All right. I mentioned when we were talking about Ukraine that there's one guy here in public life that just has the ability to analyze complex situations, understands geopolitics to a fairly well, is a war hero himself, who has come forward and told us what's really important about this whole Ukrainian flap. And this is an article that ran in the New York Post, a real newspaper. At least there's one real newspaper in the city of New York. And this is what it says: proving he's still the same old clueless windbag, ex-Secretary of State John Kerry has flagged the great worry about Vladimir Putin's invasion of Ukraine. It will lead to massive emissions and distract from the fight against climate change. Oh, my God. Oh. You know, when I read this, you know what I did, Jose? I put it down and crawled under my bed. Yeah.
Rather swiftly?
It will, yeah, very swiftly, yeah. But, you know, in the process of doing that, I scratched my arm on the frame of the bed. And then when I was trying to get out, I kind of got a little bump on my forehead. And then I stubbed my toe. So that's 3 Purple Hearts, right?
There you go.
Yeah, work for John Kerry.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah. Vladimir Putin's invasion will lead to massive emissions and distract from the fight against climate change. Yeah. That guy has got him. You know, we could have had him for our president. You got to wonder what the Democrats will think of next, right?
I shudder.
Really. Yeah, but, you know, one thing about Kerry, he didn't have a crappy personality. And, you know, if you are a Republican with a crappy personality, you know what can happen to you? You can get impeached. Not once, but twice. Even though you're not in office anymore. All right, let's break for the big halftime show in here, and I'll come back to the All-Stars versus the Church.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Putting up a fight. I'm Chris DeMeo, Fox News. It's day 5 of the Russian invasion of Ukraine. The country's 2 largest cities, including Kiev, still in Ukrainian hands.
Right now, this capital city under Ukrainian control, and it is quiet. There's some still smoke in the distance rising. This capital city has been hit by artillery shells over the past 24 hours on the outskirts of town. The most intense fighting in the second largest city of Kharkiv. Russian forces entered that city. Street fights followed, some of them very bitter, a lot with portable shoulder-mounted weapons and RPGs. By the end of the day, Ukrainian forces still in control of Kharkiv.
Fox's Steve Harrigan. A senior U.S. intelligence official saying Belarus is expected to send troops into Ukraine to fight alongside Russian forces as early as Monday. The decision reportedly depending on talks between Russia and Ukraine in the coming days. At least 352 Ukrainian civilians have been killed during Russia's invasion, including 14 children. Ukrainians protesting outside the White House Sunday say their country needs more help.
Ukrainian Americans drove to the White House from New York, Ohio, Pennsylvania, all to ask for more weapons and a no-fly zone.
We can take care of them on the ground, but we have to cover the skies.
One woman told me her husband, who is Georgian, has friends who've left to go fight in Ukraine.
They're independent citizens. They're deciding on their own, not with the military. They're just deciding to go and support.
Many agree, even with Ukraine's show of force, including from civilians, Putin won't stop in Ukraine.
And he's going to go to like Latvia or Estonia or Poland. Who knows?
Yeah, he's a crazy guy.
They say people are building Molotov cocktails in their homes, which they're calling Ukrainian smoothies. In Washington, D.C., Jessica Rosenthal, Fox News.
America is listening to Fox News.
Always here to help you. This island is our home. Through the years, we've been a friend to the neighbors we have known. Now we're banking on the future. Their services to choose. Bank Pacific, where others put branches, we place roots.
Half a day. This is Claire Manglona from Security Title with an important warning. Wire fraud is real, and home buyers and sellers are one of the biggest targets, even on Guam. When sending money by wire transfer, be sure to confirm the wire instructions by phone, not email. In this case, it's good to be suspicious and know who you're dealing with. Let the professionals at Security Title work with you to minimize loss due to wire fraud. We are here to help.
New Yorkers have been waiting 2 years for what's happening this week.
Governor Kathy Hochul making the announcement the statewide masking requirement for schools is coming to an end March 2nd. Hochul citing declining COVID-19 cases and guidance from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention.
We need to retain their flexibility to make adjustments as needed. But for now, this is a very good news announcement.
Hochul says counties and cities can keep their own mandates, and of course, parents are welcome to send their children to school wearing masks. Mask mandates remain in effect in New York State for several groups, including healthcare, nursing, transportation, corrections, and homeless shelters. Ann Carrick, Fox News.
The ongoing conflict in Eastern Europe is already impacting gas prices here in the States. They're up a dime in the past 2 weeks.
The low in this panel of cities is Houston at $3.14 for a regular grade, and San Francisco Bay Area is the high at $4.86. We have Charleston, South Carolina at $3.46, Long Island at $3.69, and Chicago $3.96.
That's Trilby Lundberg, the publisher of the Lundberg Survey. Soccer's international governing body has taken some disciplinary action against Russia after the Ukraine invasion.
FIFA officials have backed away from immediately expelling Russia from World Cup qualifying, but FIFA leaders say a ban does remain an option. FIFA did establish some new guidelines regarding Russia's soccer program. The team could play under the initials RFU, the Russian Football Federation. The Russian flag and national anthem must not be used. Also, the RFU team can only play in neutral territory and without spectators. Moscow is slated to host a World Cup qualifier next month, opening against Poland, but Poland, Sweden, and the Czech Republic have all announced their refusal to compete against the Russian squad. Bob Mortale, Fox News.
And I'm Chris DeMeo. This is Fox News.
Come try Guam's original Chamorro restaurant with Pica's Best 5 years running. Mezcla Chamorro Fusion Bistro. Experience Chef Peter's candied salmon over scallion coconut rice, octopus to naktak, Chamorro platter, and their award-winning gourmet hamburgers. Or if you're looking for something healthy, try their keto-friendly menu. Come and enjoy Mezcla's half-a-day service at their Hagåtña and Grand Plaza Tumon location. Call their Hagåtña location at 479-2652 for reservations.
When's the last time you looked at your homeowner's insurance?
An easily overlooked part of covering our home is what's inside of it. Over time, we buy things we don't want to lose, but don't update our contents coverage. The smart thing to do is get the answers and level up our insurance to make sure we're totally protected.
That's the Insurance Extra Point. Get out there and make something good happen today by calling Guahan Insurance Services at 475-1162 or visit us at the Camacho Landmark Center in Tamuning.
Everyone has a busy schedule these days, and sometimes we forget to schedule our routine dental checkup and cleaning. Don't neglect your dental health. Schedule one today with Dr. Robert Yang and his Smile Team, conveniently located at the East West Business Center on Marine Drive, Upper Tumon. Call us today at 647-8702 or 3. Again, that's 647-8702 or 647-8703. We make smiles happen.
Guam Auto Spot has the best selection in Buick, GMC, Mitsubishi, and used cars like the 2021 Mitsubishi Mirage starting at $127 per paycheck, 0 down. Call 671-478-AUTO to take a test drive or get pre-approved online at guamautospot.com.
Well, here we are at the end of another great halftime show here on Tall Tales. And it is Monday, so it's time once again to show for the weekly presentation of Hope Goes to Hollywood. And I'm not talking about Bob. I'm talking about Hope Cristobal and the video that we like to run. Because as far as Tall Tales is concerned, Hope Cristobal is the voice and the face of the separatist movement. She heads up an all-star cast. We've got Robert Underwood, who has told us in his weekly column that he has been teaching critical race theory since 1972. And then we've got Michael Bavacqua, a card-carrying separatist who is, kind of one of the major domo of the Separatist Commission headed, or the Melvin Wanpad Commission, who on a weekly basis writes separatist-type columns. Then we've got Hope. Ordinarily, we've got Laura Sauter, but Laura Sauter, I find myself not disagreeing with Laura Sauter's column this week. But you'll see Hope telling, another Tall Tales mainstay here, Paul Zerzan, the guy that introduced us to systemic racism. Oh, and I forgot to mention one other star in this panoply of stars, Neil Weir, who has now come out and embraced the term systemic racism as part of his shtick, the demagoguery that he uses every time anybody will let him climb on the soapbox to insert himself into territorial affairs, especially where he's not wanted. But Hope will tell you in this video that she is the author of the Melvin Wombat Commission, that she is Magahaga, that she's Tautanu, that she has more rights to being here than Paul Zerzan, and I suspect me and a lot of other folks, and that colonizers are probably calling someone a colonizer is the territorial equivalent of the N-word. We should probably not even say it out loud anymore. We should just say the C word because it's such a pejorative, right? Him? He's a colonizer. Okay, so and then Hope created this commission that bills itself as the Decolonization Commission, but it's not. The name that Hope gave it is this: Commission on Decolonization for the Implementation and Exercise of Chamorro Self-Determination. The rest of you guys, sorry about that. And then she told us what the Treaty of Paris says, and I don't know if she was just dumb or lying. Kind of doesn't matter, does it? So with no further ado, let's tune in on Hope Cristobal's screen test.
You're nothing but a white colonizer. That's who you are. Colonization is the same thing as slow murder. You're a murderer. That's who you are. Get off my island.
Sir, you need to go. You can't be policing people here and telling people how to protest and what to protest for. You need to go. You need to go. I'm against this. That's cool, but you cannot be policing people and telling them how to protest and what to advocate for. She has a right to go.
I'm an indigenous tomorrow. I have more rights here than you are. You came here because of the structures of colonialism, asshole. Tayo mamalaw how sige judo ni tano di taw tano how baho bini taw tano baho bini magahoga baho short na kay gitu bini hago tata na short mo bini you need to leave.
You need to go.
Please.
You need to get out of here.
Please pause this.
Get out of here.
Please. This is not
When I get a chance, go.
Please. Thank you. Thank you, partner. Please. No, you cannot confront.
What happened, ma'am?
Well, he confronted me.
What did he
He's
say?
telling me I shouldn't be here. I support Black Lives Matter. It's part of the colonialistic systemic racism. And I came here to support these people. He's a white man that has come here. And he continues the legacy of colonialism. He continues to fight people, individuals, my goodness. I'm a former senator. I authored the Commission on Decolonization. I'm a malo.
We are proud of you, Auntie.
Si Diyos malasi.
He's safe.
So there you are. If you ever wondered about the separatists and what they have in mind and what an independent Guam would be like, you might want to be sure to tune in every Monday right after the big halftime show, because we're going to keep showing this. We'll call it our part of our education campaign, and you know from listening to Hope that if you're a white man, you don't belong here. You're nothing but a colonizer, which is a synonym for murderer. And then you can see that as ridiculous as she is, she has a following of young people. You need to leave. You need to leave.
A Greek chorus.
Exactly. So she does us a big favor because she pulls the curtain back and she shows us what she's really all about. I've got an item on the card that I'm going to get into. I'm going to go ahead, skip ahead on the card to get to it, because I think we need to spend a lot of time understanding what the motivation is here for this whole separatist movement, what it is and what it isn't. But I notice I got somebody waiting in the green room here, and let me just check. It's Frenchie. Frenchie wants to talk about the Ukraine. Okay, well, let's give Frenchie some airtime to talk about the Ukraine. Go ahead, Frenchie.
Good afternoon, Bob. How are you?
I'm doing great, Frenchie. It's a whole week of tall tales ahead of me.
Yeah, I know, but it's going by so fast.
It is.
So last week I was listening to your piece on Biden and what's his name, Chamberlain. And I understand the motivation behind it, but I wholeheartedly disagree with your analysis on this, because Biden has never been one to sue for peace. Biden, his whole career, has been backing up the neocon and has been voting for all the wars of intervention that this country has had over the last 40 years. He's been, and as one of the former CIA chiefs pointed, and one of the defense chiefs also pointed, Biden has been wrong on every foreign policy issue his whole career. And so, you know, the results might be the same, but the motivations are not the one.
Yeah, I'm in defense of what I said. I'm just taking it situational, this situation right now. But you're absolutely right. And it was Secretary of Defense Gates that said that Biden has been wrong on every single. Yeah. But you're right on that, Frenchie.
Gates mentioned that, and unfortunately, this whole war could have been avoided starting back in October of last year. But I think Biden was trying to make some brownie points on the domestic political agenda here by blaming Russia, just like the way Hillary Clinton was blaming Trump with Russia. We are falling now in a period of hysterics like I haven't seen since the Iraq invasion, where actually I was shouted out and even assaulted because I was French, because the French didn't want to go along with George Bush in that silly adventure based on a lie in Iraq, which has cost, by the way, 800,000 civilian deaths and countless American lives destroyed either by being dead or maimed, and countless of treasure from this country, which is the hard cash paid by the taxpayers that we have spent in Iraq for nothing. And we are on top of it, we have weakened Iraq, which was a natural enemy of Iran, to do something very stupid. So I see us going again, doing that same type of mistake where we're pushing Russia in the arms of China at a time where we should not do it, and on the contrary, try to find a common ground with Russia. And it's doable. And as I was reminding on Ray's show this morning, two very different foreign policy advisors of the United States, Henry Kissinger and Zbigniew Brzezinski, who was Polish and was very anti-Russian, understood in their sense of realpolitik the danger that Ukraine was posing for Russia and at the time the USSR. They understood if one day Ukraine would become independent, which it did in 1991, Ukraine needed to remain neutral and not belong to any of the Western alliances like the neocons have been pushing since basically the early 2000s. And what we have now is the consequences of that. And we can remember the NATO Bucharest summit in 2008, when the U.S. and the NATO allies declare that Georgia, which was a former Soviet republic in the Caucasus Mountain next to Turkey, on the Black Sea as well, and Ukraine would become member of NATO. That was a line in the sand for the Russians. They cannot accept it. It is a dagger just at the soft belly of Russia. They cannot accept it. There is no way they can accept it. It would be like us having Chinese deploying missiles and troops in Quebec or in Mexico. It would be terrible. So what we have now is that instead of going into negotiation and trying to find a middle ground where we still have Ukraine maybe have economic relation with the EU but not getting into NATO, we have been sending arms since the Trump administration. And then now we are doing it, and now we see the Germans doing it, and we've pushed Putin in a corner where he could not react. Now, let's talk about the reaction. You are a former military person, so am I. We know that when you go in a country, if you want to, it's shock and awe, like we did in Iraq. You take out their infrastructure, their radios, their internet, their electricity, their water. You take everything out before you go in. The Russians have not done that. You can still have live feed on the internet from Ukraine. Electricity has not been cut out. Water has not been cut out. Why? Because the Russians want to save as many civilians as possible. And they want to negotiate again, but right now we're going into hysterics. We are going into the 24-hour news cycle where we want to have big titles looking like if we're doing something against an invasion, which according to NATO already existed for the last 8 years because of the two Russian republics in the Donbass. And so we are, and what's fascinating to me is that in the conservative movement in the U.S. and here on Guam as well, a lot of well-meaning people always fall in the traps for the Democrats when it comes to Russia. We are putting out the blue, white, and red, and we're saying, it's aggression, Russia, 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 and we don't look at what's really happened. And what we're doing to the Ukrainian now is what we've done in Syria, is what we've done in Libya. We're getting civilians killed because of our policies, and we are blaming the Russians, which actually are just reacting to 25 years of pushing NATO closer and closer to their border. And this is not acceptable to the Russians. Now, I'm not saying Putin is a nice guy, far from it. But we need to be a little more down to earth. And if Kissinger and Brzezinski, with as far apart politically as they could be, could agree on that issue, I think there should be voice of reasons in the U.S. to understand that this is a very dangerous situation. Sanctions that we are putting forward. Now we have closed airspace to Russian airlines. Fine. What has Russia do in retaliation? They have closed Russian airspace to Western airlines, and that has a much bigger impact than Poland closing their airlines. Russia is the largest country in the world. If their airspace is closed to our airlines, we have to fly all around the world in order to get back to Asia from Europe. It doesn't make sense. We are going after their central bank with the idea that we're going to crash the ruble down so that we will browbeat Putin into listening to what we have to say by crashing the ruble. They have very low inflation. They can take the inflation that a ruble fall would mean, and they have very little deficit. I think their deficit is at 75% of GDP compared to us, And going after the ruble, okay, why not? It might be a thing, but I don't think it's going to be efficient. And on the long run, Putin is going to be coming out even stronger. The second thing that we are trying to talk about was SWIFT. Now, SWIFT is the network that allows for the exchange of currencies throughout the world. It's the monetary worldwide internet. This is what it is. And the benefits of SWIFT has been very much for the Western countries, especially the United States, because most of the transactions are done in dollars. And all the transactions from the petrodollars have been done with SWIFT. So shutting SWIFT to Russia is actually shooting ourselves in the foot and actually could have catastrophic consequences for the dollars. We are already losing a position of dominance as the number one power around the world. And now we could have a huge impact on our own currency, which is already weakened by the policies of the Democrats nationwide. So we're having, and then the only thing that Biden is doing is blaming the Russian invasion for the inflation. But the Russians, we have to notice that they have not closed the two pipelines, one going through Ukraine and the other one, the Nord Stream 1. They have not closed the pipeline to Europe, which means the gas is still flowing. The price is going up, and they're going to get richer. So even if the ruble comes down, they will get more rubles for the dollar because the transactions are still done in dollar. It doesn't make any common sense at all. And listening to the hysterics of going on nuclear alerts and everything, and we need to have some cool heads to quiet the thing down and say, okay, we hear you, we do not agree with you, let's sit down and see, but let's not go in and sit down with the Russian and continue sending missiles to the Ukrainians. And don't forget, the reason there was two independent Russian republics in the Donbass, it was a reaction to ethnic cleansing by the Ukrainians, which has continued in the West against the 18 other national minorities that live in Ukraine. So we have a very dangerous situation. There are a couple of solutions, but right now with the hysterics that we have all throughout the West, they are not going to happen. And so far, Russia has not attacked the big city except for Kharkov or Kharkiv for the Ukrainian, which was the scene of 3 major battles during World War II. They are slowly moving in, but they are giving time to the Ukrainian to come to negotiations. They could have attacked Kiev a long time ago, but they have only attacked with 50,000 people, which is very small. If you look the number of troops we used to invade Iraq, which was less powerful than Ukraine, less big, and with less people, we use over 350,000 troops. So we have to put all those things in perspective, understand what the issues are before we start screaming from the top of our lungs, oh, invasion, invasion, invasion. And we also have to see that some of the actors on the Ukrainian side have been the accomplice of the CIA since the coup of 2014 and have been pushing for basically the equivalent of CRT in Ukraine. It is a very dangerous thing. We cannot have our cake and eat it on this. And the problem is that Biden thinks he can get some points out of this and get NATO and everything. The European countries are going along, at least the government, but the public opinions in outside of Poland and Romania, in Europe, is very much against NATO at this time. France is having a presidential election. Out of the 8 candidates that are declared now, 6 are against NATO and want to pull France out of NATO. That shows you that there is some pushback because people do not want to go to war because we have one senile president in the White House that wants to go to war with Russia. People do not want that. And you have to see also that one of our major allies in the Indo-Pacific, which is India, is actually siding with the Russians on this issue. And of course, Iran and OPEC so far has been deadly silent, and so has Israel. And don't forget, Israel helped us do the coup in 2014 against the pro-Russian president at the time. So it's very complex. South America is being very careful because they want to keep their relationship with the United States, but they are seeing that we're going the wrong way, and they're just waiting and see.
Frenchie?
So,
Frenchie, I'm sorry I got to interrupt you there. We're up against a break here. Yeah, well, I really appreciate your analysis, so thank you very much for bringing us up to speed on that. Thank you.
Yep. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Okay, short break.
The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts of Guam Training.
Hi, I'm Jerry Roberts, and every day on The Ray Gibson Show, I get to comment on the incredibly diverse, fun, challenging, sometimes frustrating, often exciting, but always interesting world of work. I hope you'll be there with us.
You can find daily transcripts of The Extra Point at GuamTraining.com. Tune in every weekday morning at 7:20 for The Extra Point with Jerry Roberts. Brought to you by Guahan Insurance Services and First Hawaiian Bank on 93.3 The Point.
Subway keeps the Eat Fresh Refresh subs rolling in with the fresh take on timeless classics. Try the honey mustard rotisserie style chicken. It's the new Subway rotisserie style chicken with a flavor upgrade, mizzled with honey mustard on hearty multigrain bread and topped with fresh hand-sliced veggies. Craving some heat? The Baja Turkey Avocado hits all the hot notes. Oven roasted turkey stacked high on hearty multigrain speared with smashed avocado and drizzled with the pecan chipotle sauce. Tuck into new subs to savor at Subway. Eat fresh.
Attention tailgaters. It's time for you to get a new tail to gate on. It's a fact. They got a 2021 model clearance going on all kinds of your favorite Nissan models, the Rogue Sport, Kicks, Murano, Titan, and they've all got great FM radios so that you can pick up tall tales in the afternoon. 0% APR, or your first 3 payments are on Nissan. Zero down magic tailgaters. Learn more by visiting NissanGuam.com.
Oh, what a gift Frenchie is, huh?
Which everybody always uses as an excuse to not take sides.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to go back and repeat some of the things that I said from the get-go, that it was not a good idea for us to be saber-rattling NATO and Ukraine, that Russia has a sphere of influence, and et cetera. It just was not a good idea. And I'm glad to hear that I'm in the same wavelength with Frenchie on that one. And once again, it's realpolitik. It's not whether the Ukrainians are good people, or whether we want to stand behind democratic governments. Those are all really nice sentiments, but it's kind of like boxing. Marquis what is it? Marquis de. Anyhow, the boxing rules, I forgot that last word. That only works if both of the boxers abide by it. But if one of them goes in for, full-on combat and the other one is boxing according to the rules, guess who's going to win? And that's kind of the way the world is. So I think Frenchie really laid it out very clearly for us in his own inimicable way. I want to change the order of the card here. Let me see who I got. I got Dr. McNinch, I think. When I see DR pop up on the screen, I think that it's got to be Dr. McNinch, everybody wants to talk about Ukraine. All right. Go ahead, Ron.
Hey, half a day, Senator, half a day, Guam. Well, actually, I was interested in the separativist stuff you were talking about earlier in the hour, too. So that's always kind of fun. I encourage everybody, if you get a chance, go back to the congressional, or not congressional, but legislative record related to the law that made the Chamorro Self-Determination Commission. And Governor Gutierrez originally vetoed it. He said that it's just probably not the most healthy way to go. And then when the veto there was an override on the veto, he questioned whether they had actually filed it in time, because the legislature had already went through a number of stages to hand over to the Republicans by that time. So there's some interesting notes that you may find interesting in the procedural aspects of that law.
In fact, I've covered that on the show, Ron. I guess you weren't listening that day, but go on.
I might not have. I apologize. But it was just a very odd kind of way that they passed that particular bill, because it was a holdover from the previous legislature, and it had been vetoed. And I don't know. The other thing that bothers me about that bill is, if you read the legislative hearing, they were constantly saying, "Oh, this will have no effect on the Commonwealth. We'll continue on with the Commonwealth, no problem. Don't worry. This is just another little thing that we're going to do in addition." And the next thing you know, nothing else was ever done except, unless you're Chamorro, you're not allowed to talk about this stuff anymore. And and I've been told directly, don't talk about this stuff. And and I teach this stuff. That's how scary it is.
Well, it's a good thing we've got Tall Tales here, where people can talk about, and are not only can, but are encouraged to talk about it, Ron.
I would never do it, but what would happen if a group of folks said, we're going to hold a government activity, or we're going to hold a community activity for everybody but Chamorro people?
Maybe, how about a plebiscite, to determine Guam self-determination? And the only people who could vote in the plebiscite would be those who were born somewhere other than Guam. That would be a good one, wouldn't it?
Well, I think it demonstrates exactly just how fundamentally unfair the current structure is. And to be blunt, I've got to say that, the thing that really bothers me the most is that if Guam had simply devoted itself to serving the community, serving the people of Guam better, we could easily have the same deal that the CNMI has through a Commonwealth, and it would have no effect on political status other than being a grand improvement over what we have now. But we've gotten, the process has become so hijacked that it's too hard for anybody to try to untangle. And that may be by design. It may be the purpose of this, and that is to play these little shell games so that, anyone who wants to say anything, if you don't fit their party line, you get shouted down or you get called names or whatever. The name that they call me a lot online and other things, they call me a settler a lot, which I find kind of funny. And when they do it, it's like little... Some
people call you Ty Cobb.
Yeah, that's true. That's always,
and the Georgia Peach.
True. And, I've been called worse. And I think that, in general, the funny thing is, when they call me names like settler, or I've never been called a colonizer, but I've been called a settler, it's like they're little kids playing these taunting games. It's just laughable because of the way it comes off. I'm like, that might mean something to you and your little insular group that you exchange meaning with, but it doesn't mean anything to anybody else. And just a lot of the speech is hateful and simply rude. And there's no reason. In fact, Guam is probably one of the least rude places I've ever lived in my life. People here are genuinely polite and very tolerant and very respectful. Even when people have intense differences of opinion, people still are very cordial and polite, and they simply don't act. I'm concerned that mainly because of the internet and because of a lot of other things, people are picking up on the worst behaviors possible and thinking that it's okay here. And that's not what our community is about. Not the community I've lived in here. I certainly don't think it's the same community that you spent so much of your life and devoted your life to. Guam has many idyllic facets that are very, it's enviable to have a community like ours because people genuinely are kind to each other. They help each other. A Napa Malik is an actual concept. It's something that people practice, and they're genuine and meaningful about it. And then this truly just vile hatefulness that some folks think that they can get away with. It's just simply not right. There is one other thing I should say, and that is I've told our elected leaders for the last 12 or 13 years, if you think this method that they're using is respected, ask the United Nations what they really think of the racially divisive method that they're using. And the United Nations, I don't think they want to hear the answer from the United Nations. The folks I talked to at the United Nations couldn't believe this community was using a kind of racial division process like this. And nobody seems to want to ask the question. It's a simple question to ask.
Interesting points, Ron.
It's always a pleasure, sir. And I do enjoy Frenchie's take on foreign affairs. And the other thing, just one final note about Ukraine. Here's what really bothers me about Ukraine. Hunter Biden was playing all kinds of political shenanigans. He was being investigated by a prosecutor in Ukraine. Joe Biden bragged about having the prosecutor fired so his son wouldn't get investigated. And while he was vice president, this whole thing stinks.
It does.
The entire relationship with Ukraine absolutely smells to high heaven. It's just terrible.
Interesting point.
That's my 2 cents.
Yeah, well, that's a very valuable 2 cents. Thanks again, Ron.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, let's head for Churchill Downs, and then we'll wrap up another episode of Tall Tales.
Hafa. I'm the owner of Guam's largest tourist attraction group. The pandemic's been very tough for all of us, and particularly for my team members. So I'm really appreciative and grateful for the PUA assistance to our team members, and more recently, the SVOG federal grant that allowed us to reopen these facilities and re-employ everyone at a critical time when PUA ended. From myself and my team, on behalf of all of us, thank you for the federal funds that allowed us to reopen.
The federal fund you provide saved many, many jobs. Thank you. Thank you so much.
We employ about 35 technicians for our shows. Thank you for the federal funds. It kept us going.
Thank you for helping with the federal funds.
Thank you for the federal funds.
Thank you for helping to save our jobs.
Thank you for the federal funds.
This ad was paid for with official funds from the Office of Congressman Michael F.Q. San Nicolas.
are, Churchill Downs, Louisville, Kentucky. Heading down the home stretch for Tall Tales. A couple more furlongs, and I'm going to be there. And I see another jockey over here in the paddock saddling up. He's pulling into the starting gate. It's none other than that famous jockey from out west, Johnny Utah. Welcome to Churchill Downs, Johnny.
How's the day, Judge Bob? How are you doing?
Couldn't be better, Johnny.
I wanted to talk about the situation going on with Ukraine. Just give you my take on it from what I've gathered. Just a real quick synopsis. I forget the gentleman's name that called before his take with at the end there on Ukraine about Joe Biden's son and everything, smelling fishy.
That's Ron McNish.
He's correct. Yeah, he's absolutely correct, and also with Frenchie, I love Frenchie's takes on things. He's very analytical and has a great mind, but his compassion, I think, is overwhelming him on this one. He just doesn't want nuclear war. He doesn't want people to die, which I get that. He wants diplomacy, but unfortunately, we're dealing with a really evil, demonic takeover of the world right now. My take on this thing is this. Biden and his handlers are in bed with not only Putin, but China, and to some extent, Ukraine and the other individuals that are all in bed with one another. Germany, Italy, everybody who is making money on this is in on this, destruction of Ukraine. If you ask me, the Nord Stream pipeline, you name it, blah 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 blah. Ukraine is one of the richest countries when it comes to minerals and ore deposits of all kinds of things. Plutonium. I think they have one. I actually think if I'm not mistaken, they have the largest plutonium deposits in the world. Okay, and Biden. I'm sorry, not Biden, but Putin struck a deal with China. Okay, he struck a deal with China, and China wants resources. They want, access to these things, and not only that, but they want access to information, technology, things of that nature. And it's just the whole thing is bad. And I think that Putin has definitely stepped over a red line, not with Biden, but with the Chinese and with other people, with the other countries, like Finland, Sweden, Switzerland, Norway, all these other Eastern Bloc countries. They're a little shocked and awe by what's happening right now. They weren't expecting Putin to invade the entire country there. They kind of threw him back, and of course, Biden had been warning everyone all along what was going to happen. So it's pretty obvious that Biden and the administration that is the Democrats, the leftist Democrat socialists, which to me, socialists are nothing more than communists in, sheep's clothing. The communists are the wolves, and socialists are ones that want to pretend they're not communists. And, to me, Biden's a communist. And those guys are looking at a world takeover. That's what's happening right now. This is a very dangerous moment in history. And they got a dangerous person they're dealing with. Putin isn't stable. He's not. But neither is Biden. And Putin is definitely got his finger on the nuclear button. There's no doubt about it. If he doesn't save face, and he feels like that he's getting the raw end of the deal between China and the United States, I'm not sure what he's going to do. It's going to get bad. It's going to get bad before it gets worse. And as for the arguments about, he's not really hurting civilians, he hasn't done anything really bad in the country. These are expeditionary forces. These are, this is a scout unit. Those cavalry scout guys that wear the blue big hats from the Civil War time that ride in the little APCs that go out and scout. That's what the Ukrainians are going up against right now. He hasn't sit in the full bludgeon of his forces, nor has he dropped the weapons that he can drop on those cities or that country. And it's just a matter of time before all those bad things start happening. and then everybody's going to really freak out. But this is dangerous. We're in a dangerous time right now, and it all is tied into money. That's what this whole thing is about. It's all about money, wealth. It's about minerals. It has nothing to do with borders. It has nothing to do with NATO being next to Russia, because Russia's already next to NATO, okay? Russia borders NATO on quite a few borders, okay? It has nothing to do with that. This is all about money. That's my take on it.
Okay, well, some of the great foreign policy scholars come from Salt Lake City. Johnny Utah is one of them. Thanks for calling, Johnny. So I got about 10 minutes left here. I want to get into Laura Sauter's column. I don't think I'll have time to finish it, but I got 10 minutes, so I'm going to give it a start. I put this on the card as civil society versus separatism. And I had planned on bringing it on right after Hope Cristobal's screen test. While our minds were still in that framework. But I know the conflagration, the situation in Ukraine grabs an awful lot of attention, and it's really hard to say, well, we don't want to talk about Ukraine now. I want to talk about something else. And, of course, the show is, in a sense, audience-driven. I start out with a card, but oftentimes the show goes in a direction not exactly the one that I'd planned. So, civil society versus separatism. This is Laura's column in Saturday's paper. I've been pretty hard on her most of the time because I count her as being in the same separatist camp as Robert. I've been teaching critical race theory since 1972. Underwood, Michael Bavacqua, Neil Weir. I will advocate anything so long as people will pay attention to me. That's Neil's bag. So this is the title of Laura's column. What does Chamorro nation building mean in a colonial setting? We often think of sovereignty in political terms. A colony is not politically sovereign, nor can no one can dispute that reality. So why bother using such terms as nation building, cultural sovereignty, and political self-determination to describe the aspirations that Tautano have for the future of our island? If she had just left self-determined off the end of that, she'd have been fine. But anyhow, it's incumbent upon those of us who celebrate Chamorro language, cultural traditions, and our way of life, and for everyone who calls Guam home, to think more deeply about these issues. Let me offer a few of my own reflections. Nation building is often associated with a nation state. Since we are politically part of the American empire and hold U.S. citizenship, one can make the case that we are already part of a nation. We write USA when asked about our nationality. There are more Chamorro people living in the contiguous U.S. than there are in Guam. All true. But First Peoples throughout the U.S. have clearly established that nations can exist within a nation. Now, First Peoples is, kind of the campy way of talking in terms of what we used to call Indians. Now we call them Native Americans, but in Canada, they're referred to as First Nations. Yeah, so if you really want to show people that you're up to speed on the separatist lingo, you have to understand these terms, right? Additionally, nation building refers to the process whereby a people consciously and deliberately engage in shaping the institutions and priorities that fulfill their aspirations. In this context, nationhood, or exercising cultural sovereignty, has less to do with geopolitical control than it has to do with control of the psyche and identity consciousness of a people. Now, she's finally getting around to the part that I agree with. And she goes to the Mille Lac Band of Ojibwe Chief Executive Melanie Benjamin, describes it succinctly. Cultural sovereignty is ancient and predates the arrival of non-Indians. Whoa. This lady is part of the Ojibwe tribe, and she uses the word Indians. It is a kind of sovereignty that we can only lose if we choose to give it up. Cultural sovereignty is our inherent right to use our values, traditions, and spirituality to protect our future. It goes much deeper than legal sovereignty because it's a decision to be Anishinaabe, to not just protect a way of life, but to practice living Anishinaabe every day. From the first time I heard Samuel Betances, my husband, speak here in Guam in the 1970s, he has reminded us that language is the umbilical cord to culture. I have become ever more conscious of the connection between our indigenous language and Chamorro cultural sovereignty. This realization has fueled my passion for Chamorro language revitalization. It is no mere whim that moved the United Nations Assembly to declare 2022 to 32 the International Decade of Indigenous Languages. Yeah, you could have left the United Nations out. Talk about irrelevance. The international community of nations recognizes that indigenous languages not only symbolize cultural sovereignty, they also enable it. The balanced relationship with the land and sustainable living are part of what is known as bio-sovereignty. There is much interest, especially among young islanders who are leading the movement for food sovereignty and sustainability. Yeah, I see young folks every day out in the boonies with their casinos, working from dawn to dusk, sweating like young butchers. Yeah.
With their flask of Starbucks.
Yeah. The profound respect for the land and healthy life it sustains promises to reverse the post-war food dependency that took a foothold in Guam as arable lands were taken by eminent domain for military usage. The Tautau went from being able to grow or catch what was consumed prior to the war, and there are only about 20,000 people here, to being 90% dependent on imported food in less than a generation. Thanks to the young Guatlo warriors of today, we are chipping away at 7 decades of dependency. I can't wait. Speaking or learning Chamorro without apology, respecting the land, honoring our elders, and creating a framework for sustainability at many levels is what nation building is all about. Now, I had to read all this way to get to the part where she finally makes some sense. Speaking or learning to speak Chamorro without apology, respecting the land and honoring our elders, and creating a framework for sustainability at many levels is what nation building is all about. Did you notice what the role of the government was in that? None. None at all. So Laura's correct. There are nations that are not coterminous with political states. There is the Ojibwe nation. And you can talk in terms of the German nation being spread all over Europe until Hitler came along. But she's right, and she puts her finger on something that's really important here. Speaking or learning to speak Chamorro without apology, respecting the land, honoring our elders, and creating a framework for sustainability at many levels is what nation building is all about. I wish you the best. Zahu Finotmo, Laura Sauter, Mauliki Finotmo, Zahu Estigi. Well, you don't have to drag the government into this in order to do it. Now, I want to pick up on this tomorrow because I think there's something really important here concerning this whole issue. But that's it for today. I'm going to say good luck to the folks in the Ukraine and the traditional greeting for our president. Let's go, Brandon.
The Point is KUSG, Hagåtña, Guam, 93.3 FM and 104.3 HD3.
Not going to plan. I'm Chris DeMeo, Fox News. It's day 5 of the war in Ukraine, but so far the country's 2 largest cities remain in Ukrainian control. Many experts saying that Russian President Vladimir Putin didn't expect the operation to be this difficult.
I think some of the earlier forces sent in were conscript, were drafted troops. We could see more expert soldiers held in abeyance. But it is a remarkable scene you're pointing to, and that is sometimes when these tanks or armored vehicles roll into a village, the entire village will come out. They'll stand in the road and they'll block the tanks. Real bravery and support, and it just shows these Russian forces are not being met like President Putin thought they'd be met here in Ukraine. They are being met with resistance from people who are ready to fight and people who are ready to stand in front of a tank.
Fox's Steve Harrigan. Meantime, Russia has placed its nuclear forces on high alert.
We get this news that Russia